Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Dan Horsey. I'm a content marketing manager here at Medable, and with me I have Patient Advisory Council member and founder of the Sumaira Foundation, Sumaira Ahmed. Sumaira, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Dan. I'm excited to shed light on neuromyelitis optica, not just with you, but hopefully our entire Medable audience. So thanks for tuning in and listening to this recording. My name is Sumaira. I am 31 years old. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and I was a normal young woman. Well, normal is questionable, but I was just, a pretty typical young professional living in Boston. I worked in healthcare at the time, and I was 25 years old when I suddenly and very rapidly actually lost vision in my right eye out of nowhere. So prior to my vision loss, I had great vision. I was very fit and very healthy. I was a dancer my whole life, and this kind of came out of nowhere. And initially we sort of brushed it off as maybe it was sunspots, and I was maybe looking at the sun and felt whatever. But as the area in which I lost vision started to grow and grow to the point where I was debilitated, we quickly realized that this was a problem well beyond the clinic. So I went to the emergency room. I was a wide-eyed, naive person ready to go to a 4th of July barbecue after my scheduled MRI. And of course, it didn't work that way. So what was supposed to be a 2-hour quick visit to get an MRI turned into, I want to say it was like a 14, 15-hour day in the emergency room, having seen a bunch of different specialists, everyone's scratching their heads. I saw retina people, cornea, general ophthalmology, neuro-ophthalmology finally, and then I was transferred to the main hospital, which is Massachusetts General Hospital. Finally got my MRI 14 hours later. That was my first MRI ever. And I vividly remember it was 1 a.m. and the neurology fellows were telling me that they had found inflammation on the optic nerves and chiasm in my brain image. And that's what was causing the vision loss. And, as a 25-year-old who just thought I was, what's the word, Dan, where you think you're like invincible?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I think you have the wrong image. You should check. I don't think that you just can't imagine that like you have inflammation in your brain when you were otherwise so healthy. And so I got admitted into adult neurology. It was an interesting experience. That was my first time of many, many times to come being admitted there. And I didn't tell my family because basically nothing else felt wrong. And they assured me that after 3 doses of steroid infusions, I would be well on my way back to recovery and would recover my vision within 3 months to a year. At that time, it was diagnosed as idiopathic optic neuritis, which is a precursor for multiple sclerosis. So idiopathic, meaning it was like a fluke kind of incident that it wouldn't happen again. And I was just instructed to just sort of move on with my life and hope that it never happens again. I had a 16% chance of developing MS at the time, which, I didn't like hearing, but it wasn't 100% chance. So I moved on. 3 weeks later, I started to feel numbness and tingling in my extremities. So my fingers, my toes, my legs, and then, what started happening over a period of 3 days, I went from the vision loss that I had experienced 3 weeks before to both of my eyes now, and my acuity had it digressed from 20/20 to 2600 in a period of 3 days. I was nauseous. I was actually, I would say confused. Not what's It's like a medical terminology, but you're so disoriented. Yeah, I think it was shock. I think it was like I was very disoriented. My 2 eyes, like this one was 2600, this one was 2120. So the depth perception was making me very dizzy. My skin was flushed, and like everything just felt like there was electricity in my body. So clearly it wasn't as simple as they had made it seem when I initially went in. So I was rushed to the hospital again, full body scans. I got a lumbar puncture, which is the worst. And yeah, it turns out that I have this very rare autoimmune disease called neuromyelitis optica. And so I was diagnosed as an inpatient. I was in the hospital that second time for about 7 days. I had the steroid infusions, which is standard protocol for acute attacks. And then I started chemotherapy. And it was definitely an interesting time in my life. There was a lot of fear and uncertainty and confusion and anger. There was sadness. I felt alone. They didn't really know what my future looked like. So it was like in a matter of a second, my whole life changed as I knew it.
Yeah, wow. I can imagine it's just crazy one day to just wake up and just like that, your whole life has changed in a way that you might not be able to fathom yet. But for those who aren't familiar with the condition, would you mind telling us a little bit about what NMO is and then where we're kind of at with it as a healthcare industry today?
Yes, I would love to. That's the whole purpose of the Sumaira Foundation. We illuminate the darkness of neuromyelitis optica. So, neuromyelitis optica, also known as NMO, I'll just refer to NMO because it's a tongue twister, but it is a rare autoimmune disease that takes place in the central nervous system. So, that is the optic nerves and the spinal cord. And patients who suffer from NMO experience vision loss, weakness, numbness, paralysis, bladder, bowel, and sexual incontinence. And, it pains me to say it, but many of our patients are blind and or paralyzed. So it's a really tough it's a tough diagnosis. And that's why I said earlier to you that I am one of the lucky ones. I'm still able to work. I got treated very quickly. I got diagnosed rather quickly. Am now on the right cocktail of medications, but, that's not the case for every patient. As I alluded to earlier, there is no cure. So we have no idea why it happens either. It's not hereditary. But and the way it's treated is with immunosuppressive therapy. So in many cases, chemotherapy. It is treated with steroids and something called plasma exchange or plasmapheresis, which I have actually had twice. It is a crazy experience, but it really, really helped me. In other cases, IVIG, intravenous immunoglobulin, is also a way to treat the disease preventatively. So all this to say that there are options now for patients in terms of treatments. There was a time when there wasn't. So that's really good news. And also, I don't know if I mentioned that it happens to 10 out of a million people.
Wow.
So you talk about rare.
Yeah.
And then on top, but actually, I should say, that there have been a lot of developments. So, as I just said, there are treatment options. Actually, since 2019, we as a community have experienced 3 FDA-approved therapies for NMO. That's huge. That's never happened to us before. When I was sick, we did experimental stuff when I first got sick. So now knowing that there is pharma invested in our disorder to help us maintain high quality lives to the best of our abilities is huge. The other thing I will say too is a little over a decade ago, there's a doctor out in at the Mayo Clinic. His name is Dr. Dean Wingerchuk. He's like one of the godfathers of this disease. He and some of his colleagues actually discovered an antibody specific to neuromyelitis optica. So now you can actually test to see if you have the antibody. Though I will say 30% of us, myself included, test negative. So sometimes the test can be inconclusive, but 70% of people who have a definitive antibody test, that's better than not knowing at all, right? So I think these are all good steps and in the right direction. And we're starting to get more clarity on what the future can look like. It doesn't have to be so devastating anymore.
You know, it feels like a lot of people, at least when I've gotten a diagnosis myself, don't necessarily understand what to do with it quite at first. But you pivoted in a way that where you aim to solve that problem with your foundation. Could you tell us a little bit about it, as well as the mission that you all have?
Yeah, so we have like three-pronged mission. The first is to raise awareness.
Yep.
And, the whole philosophy behind that was, as a 25-year-old, when I got this and I realized nobody really knew about it,
Yep.
I kind of just did a simple math equation. And I was like, all right, well, if more people know about it, the more likely they are to donate to research. And then research is how we find a cure. So we raise awareness and through a variety of different ways. And then all of the money that we get, we actually do fund research. If you go on the website, you'll be able to see what projects we have funded so far. But this year, we have a goal of giving away like $200,000 in research for NMO, which, research is expensive and it doesn't seem like a lot of money, but in a rare disease space where there's not much money anyway, they 200,000 can go a long way and can really make a difference. And if anything, it can really get a project up and off the ground. Because most research grants want to support research that's already ongoing, that has already had funding. So we're basically targeting the small fish and giving them a chance through our research. And then the third part of the mission is that we are very, very passionate about community development. And I think that came from the fact that I myself was and am a patient and understood firsthand and experienced firsthand how isolating it can be to have a rare disease that no one really around you knows much about. So, the philosophy behind that is that the only people who can truly understand, empathize, and support you in a way that you need sometimes are the people who suffer themselves. So we have built a community around the world, which is really incredible. And I think now when patients are newly diagnosed, they don't have that same isolated feeling and loneliness that I, for example, felt when I got sick 7 years ago, because there's so many opportunities now to connect with other patients. So we're very passionate about bringing the community together in ways that are not just about NMO, but we do other things together too, whether it's virtually or online. So long answer to what we're about.
So Sumaira, you mentioned, a little bit earlier about the different types of successes, and for those paying attention, it's important to note that a lot of the money that you said from raising the voices of NMO did end up coming. In fact, almost to date, you guys are sitting around just a little bit under $500,000, and that's just with a couple years down of success down the line. But tell me, if you had to take it 5 to 10 years into the future, what would you love to see? What would be the future you would want to live in and these kinds of patients to live in?
I think that's a great question, and I'm so glad that you asked that. I think success is looks different to everybody, and especially everybody in the organization. For me, as the founder, as the patient leader, the ultimate success is to find a cure. And, my commitment to our patients, our fellow advocates, researchers, the pharmaceutical companies, the clinicians, everybody involved, is that as a person, I will never stop if I can help it until we find a cure. So that's the first thing. And then I think the secondary and tertiary things are, even if I can help one person from preventing them from being in a tough situation or a situation that's irreversible, which unfortunately happens in our community, by being there for them because they feel comfortable enough to reach out to me or the organization, and I can guide them and help them navigate this very intricate path to navigate, it's like a labyrinth, then that's successful to me too. We've very frequently receive web queries from all over the world, from patients in literally everywhere, who ask us like the simplest of questions, like, how do I ask my doctor like this and that? And being able to guide them, I feel, is also a measure of success. There is a resource for them. There are actually multiple resources for them. So I think resource development and providing that and making things accessible is also successful to me. And, this is more of like a touchy-feely kind of success, but just knowing that these patients and people who care for them now feel genuinely that we are in this together, as opposed to going through it alone, is goes the farthest for me right now today.
So Sumaira, I mean, you've had a number of great successes. One of the ones that's most interesting that I want to go back to is a little bit about elevating the patient voice and your voices of NMO. You mentioned that's a big success, that there's a waiting list on it. But I wanted to also ask you about your ambassador program and its growth,
Yeah.
and have you get in a little bit about that. So why don't tell us what the ambassador program is, and how someone can get involved.
Yeah. Oh man, this one really tickles the cockles of my heart. I really, really love the ambassadors, and I love the program. I'm so glad we did it. But just a little bit of history. I guess 2 years ago, I was brainstorming with our executive team, and I said, guys, we have so many patients in our community who have all the time in the world now because they're just at home, they're disabled, they can't work anymore, they can't go to school anymore, whatever, their lives have changed, but they really want to help and make a difference. How can we get them involved? And that was as simple as that. So we created this ambassador program. We started with 5 people because I wanted to make sure there was a proof of concept, that we ironed out all of, the kinks and got it to a place where if it worked, then we would grow it. So in a nutshell, in 2 years, we have grown from 5 to now 30 ambassadors. We have 4 international folks. So that's UK, South Africa, and 2 in Canada. And I'm actually interviewing someone this week from China. And then we have representation in 18 states. So this ambassador program is probably one of the main reasons why the foundation has experienced as much growth as it has in the last 2 years. It's patient and caregiver driven. They have they have so many different perspectives, also because they're from all over the place, on the planet. And while there are common denominators of issues, obviously with symptoms, in terms of access, in terms of treatment, in terms of advocacy, in terms of awareness, all of those things are so different depending on where you are in the world geographically. And we wanted to tap into these resources because if we groom these guys to be experts and advocates in their local communities, support for their local communities will be even closer. So they are champions of the foundation. They are so passionate. They're equally as driven, if not more, to find a cure to help others, because it's like this notion of paying it forward. They don't want others to experience what they have experienced. And like I said to you earlier, if we can even just help one person, what a reward that is for us. So like I said, we have 30 of them. They obviously work in awareness generation, local community support, fundraising, advocacy. Some of them are even getting into policy work. And it's really a win-win situation for us. They're helping us in so many ways by giving us the wings to spread across the world and help others. And for them, it's giving them this sense of purpose and meaning again, after years of feeling lost and isolated and without purpose. So really just a genuinely amazing program for everyone involved. And we learn from each other every day. We have grown so much. We develop fun projects together, and it's just amazing. And if I had to give any fellow nonprofit, executive director advice on how to engage the community, I think an ambassador program and investing in your own is the way to go, because these guys are incredible.
Nice. And they can apply on sumairafoundation.org, correct?
Yeah, they certainly can. So there's an entire section of our website dedicated to the ambassador program. So I would say a somewhat simple application process, but we get about 2 to 3 applications a week. We don't accept everyone, and that's not because of any other reason except that we want to make sure that the people who are with us and joining the team are just as serious as we are. We got work to do, honey.
Nice.